I'm going to call the October 13th Planning Commission meeting to order. We do not have a quorum as yet, so I'm going to tread water here for a few minutes. Can we move ahead with the citizen input on non-agenda items, Brian?
Yeah, I would think you could do that.
Okay, do we have any citizen input on non-agenda items? That wasn't much stalling there. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes of the last meeting?
I did.
Can we approve the minutes without a quorum?
Well, technically, no.
Okey dokey.
In your bylaws, it says a majority of the members of the commission constitutes a quorum.
Well, that's-
And we've always interpreted that to mean of the seven
Because it's 7 members.
members, which
But we-
means,
but we only have 5 to
Four.
begin with.
but that's what I'm thinking is, since we only have 5, we could interpret that, 3 out of the 5 is a majority of the membership.
Why don't we go with the more liberal and loose interpretation
And
of that?
I've seen other planning commissions do that, because you'd be surprised how common getting a quorum is across the state. So I think we could do that. It's not
Are you-
reaching too far. Majority of the members, we only have 5 members.
Right.
We have 3 of them. Mr. Charlotte, you're okay with that?
Yes, indeed.
Mr. Hensley?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And I'm going to ask once again, if you have an opportunity to read the minutes of the last meeting.
Yes, we have.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I would move that we approve the minutes from September the 22nd as written.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the September 22nd meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There it is. If that's for me, I'm not here. No problem. We'll move on to the public hearing, considering a request from Will Snyder, White River Homes for, and now we definitely have a quorum. How you doing today, Larry? Good. We're going to consider a request from Will Snyder, White River Homes, for approval of a minor land partition application proposing to create 2 lots at 103 Northeast 9th Avenue. That's MLP 14-02. I will read the public hearing format. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, there will be a staff report, and then questions, if any, from the Planning Commission. Then we will open the public hearing for testimony. The applicant will have no more than 15 minutes. Proponents, those persons in favor of the application, no more than 5 minutes per person. Opponents, those are the persons opposed to the application. That would be no more than 5 minutes per person. Neutral, persons with no opinion, not more than 5 minutes per person. And rebuttal by the applicant, no more than 10 minutes. Then we will close the public hearing. That means that no further testimony will be allowed. Questions, if any, by the Planning Commission, and discussion by the Planning Commission, and then a decision by the Planning Commission. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please step forward when the chair calls for proponents if you favor the application, or opponents if you are opposed to the application. To the microphone, state your name, address, and interest in the matter. You will also need to sign the testimony sheet at the microphone with your name and address. You may be limited by time for your statement depending upon how many people wish to testify. Everyone is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with the previous testimony. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria listed on the wall. failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and interested parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the City Council and the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Further, a failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of the approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the hearings body for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The Planning Commission shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written evidence or testimony. Any such continuance or of extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. If additional documents or evidence are provided by the party, the Planning Commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension of the record requested by an applicant shall result in a corresponding extension of the 20-day period. All righty. I think somewhere along here, I'm supposed to ask if we have any conflicts of interest.
I don't have a conflict of interest, but I live close to that. I received a letter from the Planning Commission in regard to this, and I walked by the subject property and viewed it.
Okay. Mr. Hensley, any?
No conflict, but I do just live down the street.
Okay. Larry?
No.
Okay.
He doesn't live down the street.
Well, he does not live down the street, that's true. And neither do I, so I have no conflict either. Anybody out there want to question our ability to be impartial in this?
Could you speak up?
Sure.
I mean, there's 9 microphones there, and they're not being used.
These microphones are for the television viewers.
Oh, well, I can't hear
So,
you very well.
okay, so I will attempt to keep my voice much louder
There you go.
and reach the back of the room. And no training from Juilliard on that, so there we go. So, Brian, you want to move forward with the,
Thank you for stepping in for the chair tonight. Brian Brown, Planning Director, to present this particular minor partition. MLP 14-02, it's at 103 Northeast 9th Avenue. That's just up the block from us here on Ivy, a few streets. And the proposal, you can see the location, that lot right there, tax lot. And this is the proposed conceptual layout with the dash line representing where they're proposing a new property line. Whenever you have a site that has existing houses, in this case, both an existing house here and an existing shop over here, today, all one parcel, when you have those existing structures and you want to keep them, which they do in this case, then to finally implement this with the partition plat that will be filed of record in the courthouse, they'll have to do a survey to make absolutely certain that the distances they say this house is from this proposed property line, which is 15 feet, I can't read that from here, 15 feet, which meets the setback requirements for a rear yard for this parcel 1, to make sure that that actually happens in the real world, because this is just conceptual in the drawing, it's not a surveyed drawing. The applicant feels confident that he'll be able to meet those requirements once he does the survey, and I think that's in the works. So I just wanted you to be aware that this doesn't have that, it has a scale on it, so it's not, so it's, I think we can mostly believe that. And just wanted you to know that it's not a survey quality drawing, but we're basing the dimensions on what he's measured up here. So when we're reviewing these two lots, there's several things that we need to look at. We talked about the fact he's saving the existing homes. There's also two existing driveways that are located. I don't know if the drawings showed those or not. No, it's not that detailed. On North Ivy, one of the driveways is obviously closer to the intersection of Ivy and Ninth. And my understanding is that they're planning to remove that driveway, which is a good thing because it's has the potential of being too close to the intersection because Ivy is a collector street, higher classification, has more traffic, and the separation from the intersection needs to be met. And they don't have any need for that driveway. The other existing driveway is at the very south end of the property. And that's the driveway it sounds like they're going to propose to use, either that driveway or one in approximately similar location. And it easily meets the separation distance requirement from the intersection. Another issue that's pointed out in the staff report is if they use that existing driveway down here, then it's actually too close to the driveway on the next property to the south. Staff is pointing that out, that you have the power and authority to grant an exception. And I think due to the fact that this is an existing driveway that's always led to this shop in the back, that I think that's a good enough reason for you to grant an exception for the separation. These two driveways may be about 10 feet at the most apart, and that is the normal standard on any local street such as 9th Avenue. That would meet the standard, but Ivy's a collector street and the driveways are supposed to be 100 feet apart. And so there's really no way you're going to meet that separation requirement in any practical sense if you're going to divide the property. And so you have to kind of weigh all the issues. Is it a good thing to divide this property, make greater efficiency, use of the land, and all the comprehensive plan goals that go along with efficient use of property and of the utilities that exist, rather than new subdivisions out on the edge of town eating up the farmland. I mean, that's basically one of the arguments. And when we do this, of course, you want to make sure it meets all the development standards, and that's what we've shown through the staff report, that it does meet those standards except for that driveway separation. All the necessary utilities are in Ivy Street. That's going to require probably a couple bores or cuts into the street to make those connections. Wherever that happens, there's been a condition of approval to repair the sidewalk that might need to be cut and replace that, and the street paving that might be needed if they can't make those connections with, I don't see how they do it with a bore. I'm not really sure, since you're actually connecting. And there was no threshold triggered to do a traffic analysis. There will be, as a result of this, if approved, there'll be one new house built, and typically they generate about 9 trips a day, and there's plenty of available capacity on Ivy Street that's not going to have a significant impact. So no traffic study was done. Each of these lots that you saw in the conceptual drawing has to have a minimum 7,000 square foot, needs a 60-foot minimum lot frontage along Ivy for parcel 2, the new lot, and that's exactly what's being proposed. And as mentioned, the utilities are already there to the existing home. It's the new parcel 2 to the south that will get its utilities from Ivy Street. And I mentioned the driveway separation. It's actually 30 feet from the intersection, and then the 100-foot separation from driveways. And there are 2 on-site parking spaces that will be required. That'll be evaluated when the partition is created through filing the partition plat, and someone comes in for a building permit. We'll make sure that 2 on-site parking spaces are provided in a paved manner to meet the code at that time. And all the existing street and sidewalk improvements are adequate to serve this. And so that makes a lot of the developers in town are looking for sites like this where there's minimal expenses because there aren't any street widening. The sidewalks have already been put in. And so it's just a matter of getting utilities and the process going through the partition and making sure that they have enough lot area and separation from the existing homes to make it work. One of the things that's a little unusual on this one is that they're trying to retain the shop, and it's going to end up on the new parcel. A shop has the potential to become a commercial storage building, and that's not an allowed use in the residential zone. And so the way you need to think of it is, as soon as a home is built on the lot, then the shop is a normal accessory use to the home that will be there. The applicant is a home builder. That's why he's doing this, and so I'm sure that it won't be that long before we'll see a home appear on this lot. But in the meantime, we've made a condition of approval to restrict use of the shop to only uses that are allowed within the zone district. And that wouldn't be a commercial storage facility. And some people have tried to do that in residential districts. Street tree easement is likely to be needed if we're going to meet our street tree requirements on the new parcel. So we'll see that on the partition plat that gets filed. And then I already talked about possible removal of the sidewalk to make the utility connections, and they'll be required to fix that. So staff's recommended approval of this minor partition subject to the conditions that we've talked about and listed in the staff report. Are there any questions?
Okay. Hearing no questions for staff, then we'll move on to the open public hearing for testimony from the applicant, not more than 15 minutes. Who would that be?
That'd be me.
That would be you? You're up?
Okay, did I just sit?
Just sit up right up there, and you have to sign in and state your name and address.
Okay. My name is Will Snyder. I live at 228 Northeast 10th Avenue, which is 10th and Juniper, 1 block from this location. I've lived in town here for 3 years now. I'm a real estate appraiser, and in conjunction with my brother Joe Snyder, who's also owner of Snyder Construction, we also build homes here in town. To date, we've built 6 homes in the city limits. And with that is our intention here. We're going to keep the existing home. We're going to rehab it. We also rehab homes throughout the Clackamas County, South Multnomah County area. So we're going to rehab the existing home because it's still of great value. Build a new home on parcel 2. It's going to be a 1-level home. I want to match it to the existing neighborhood as best as we can. I don't see a need or desire to build a 2-story house there. I'd like to try to keep the existing shop is a great design shop. It's got a full 2-foot tall stem wall, a full concrete slab foundation, 10-foot or 12-foot eaves. So it's a good shop. And I think somebody who would want to who's willing to be on Ivy, a collector street, the value of the shop would be a benefit. It is our goal to rehab and sell the existing home as soon as we can, once this is approved, and start construction on the house early winter, or late winter or early spring of next year.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Are there any other proponents of this project? Hearing none, seeing none, we will move on to opponents. Are there any opponents of this project? Are there any persons that are neutral on this project that would like to speak? Okay. And I am going to, seeing and hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on this. Questions, if any, by the Planning Commission?
I have a comment on Mr. Snyder's previous property that he did on Juniper Street, and I think you did a wonderful job on it. You really made a
And I think that was actually my brother, the blue house, or yeah.
around the corner of 9th and Juniper on the west side. So if this turns out anything like that, it'll be a very good addition to the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, we both live in town here, and this will make things better.
Any more questions or comments on this? Then I guess we move on to the thank you. I kind of like the ambient. It's kind of set the mood, you know?
Yeah.
Halloween's mood coming on, you know? So we'll move on to some discussion. Is there any discussion that we have on this? Okay, and we'll move on to a decision. Would anybody like to make a proposal on this?
Mr. Chair, I propose that we accept this proposal for 103 Northeast 9th Avenue with the following conditions: that the survey be completed, and that we make an exception for the driveway that's already cited on Ivy Street to allow it, even though it's totally not in compliance.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done. You know, congratulations. Thank you very much. We will now move on to a request from Robert. And can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, well, that's good. We will consider a request from Robert and Mary Lane for approval of a conditional use permit application to construct a detached accessory dwelling in their rear yard at 1350 North Birch Street. That's CUP 14-02. Once again, I will read the public hearing format. First, we will have the staff report. Any questions, if any, by the Planning Commission or staff. We will then open public hearing for testimony. First, we'll hear from the applicant, not more than 15 minutes. Proponents, persons in favor of the application, not more than 5 minutes per person. Opponents, persons opposed to the application, not more than 5 minutes per person. Neutral, persons with no opinion, not more than 5 minutes per person. And then rebuttal by the applicant of not more than 10 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. Then there will be questions, if any, by the Planning Commission, discussion by the Planning Commission, and then a decision by the Planning Commission. All interested parties and persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please step forward when the chair calls for proponents if you favor the application, or opponents if you are opposed to the application. To the microphone, state your name, address, and interest in the matter. You will also need to sign the testimony sheet at the microphone with your name and address. You may be limited by time for your statement depending upon how many people wish to testify. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with the previous testimony. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria listed on the wall. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and interested parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the City Council and the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of the approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the hearings body for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The Planning Commission shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written evidence or testimony. Any such continuance of extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the Planning Commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension of the record requested by an applicant shall result in a corresponding extension of the 120-day time period. So are there any conflicts of interest or ex parte conflicts?
No, sir.
No.
Okay, and me either. So let's move forward, Brian, with the,
Okay, well, I think both Mary Ann and Robert Lane are in the office. And this does involve a detached accessory dwelling unit in their rear yard. So this is the location of the property in the red on North Birch Street. That street is considered a neighborhood route, which is in between a local street and a collector street in the classification system. As you can see that she has frontage on Birch. There's flag lot arrangements in that area there where there's some lots that take access from Birch but are behind the other houses. And those are fairly large lots, and so I think that's relevant to take a look at the platting in that area and notice that these are substantial sized lots where this is proposed. And it's all is a residential area completely surrounded by other same zoning, same residential uses that would occur here. This is their submitted site plan, and what it's showing here, it's a little dark, but there's the existing house in this location, and this is North Birch down here. I think north is that way. And this is representing the driveway that's out to Birch. And then here is a sidewalk that's proposed to go in the backyard. Not a driveway, but a sidewalk. And here's the new accessory detached dwelling. It's a one-story building. It's 783 square feet, if I'm reading it right. It has to be less than 800. So that's one of the criteria. And so I think they've placed a porch out on this side, and they have the sidewalk going along the side here. And they've indicated that their immediate plans are to provide a home for their mother in it. But you need to be thinking of the fact that this will run with the land if approved with this conditional use permit, and becomes a separate rentable dwelling can be for anybody, future owners that might want to use this particular site. Some of the things that we think about when we do a conditional use permit is whether there's adequate separation of any incompatible land uses or activities, and in this particular case, I just made the emphasis that they're all residential dwelling units, so we're certainly in accordance with the comp plan in that area. Provision of adequate space for each type of use. There we fall back on the fact that this is a pretty darn large existing lot, and by adding another dwelling unit, you have your principal house, and then the fact that they make the accessory dwelling unit be no bigger than 800 square feet assures that it's kind of the accessory unit in size and such. And there's, I think you saw from the plan that it's floating out in a very large rear yard. There's still plenty of setback and space from all the neighboring properties, far beyond what the minimum setback requirements are for a house. So there seems to be plenty of adequate space for them to propose to do this. One of the other things we talk about is maximizing the use of existing public facilities and such. What better way to add additional housing opportunities within town but to utilize your own existing yard for another dwelling unit, if you can do it in a way that doesn't change the character of the neighborhood, doesn't really impact the surrounding area significantly. And that's part of what the judgment call is through the conditional use process, is for us to hold a public hearing, see what the neighbors think of it, have that public input, and see how they feel about it, and whether they think that the way staff has looked at it, that there is enough space and there's enough setbacks, and the use is the same kind of use. It's lessening the impact by not having another driveway go to the rear yard. The extra parking space that's required will be out front with the other parking spaces to the principal building that's already there. And as I mentioned, it's one way that the entire Portland metropolitan area has in the we're just outside the metro boundary. All those 26 cities that are nearby that are part of metro are required to allow by right accessory dwelling units. In Canby, we encourage them by making those that are attached to the home an outright permitted use. With those that are detached, there was a thought, I wasn't here, but my understanding is there was a thought that they could be a bit more impactful depending on how they were oriented, who the neighboring properties were, and how close they might be in the size of your yard and such. And so they made it a conditional use permit. Still an allowed use if you'll approve that, but an opportunity for the neighbors to have a say and be notified when something like that is proposed. And so that's certainly what we have done here by holding the public hearing and sending out notice. The development standards, no greater than 800 square feet, separation from the principal dwelling by at least 10 feet, one additional hard surface parking space, and then an exterior to that new dwelling unit that's similar to that of the primary dwelling unit in terms of paint color or material that's on the outside of the structure. And they've complied with all of those. In fact, I think they said something about they're in the process of redoing the exterior on the principal building. They're just going to make them very similar and the same. And in this particular case, their desire is to try to meter with the same meters that they have on the principal house, wherever that's allowed by the utility providers. I think the electric company's probably going to set up a separate meter, but they'll be able to use the same water meter and just extend the lateral from their house for sewers purposes onto the accessory dwelling. So that minimizes the amount of utility work that needs to be done. And they're perfectly willing to have single meters where that's allowed. So in our review criteria, there's A, B, C, and D in the code. And I feel like I went through a couple of the comp plan and requirements. We just went through the development code. It meets all of those standards. It makes opportunities for other types of housing within the community. That meets a comprehensive plan goal. It provides efficient use of land, and from that standpoint, it meets another comprehensive plan goal. The utility services are more than capable in this area to handle one more dwelling unit. That's not an issue, so that's a inexpensive way to add additional housing to the community without lots of expenses. And item D is basically your call and the neighbor's call as to whether they think that this proposal will substantially change the character of the surrounding area in some manner that might preclude their use or in their mind significantly impact either the value or something else on their property. Staff's recommended approval of this, of course, without benefit of hearing any of the public input at this point. And we did make 3 conditions of approval to go along with that. Just make it clear that it's the applicant's expense on making those necessary utility connections, and that they should make sure that all those utility providers have agreed to how they're connecting before they start excavating. And on the third parking space, it is required to be hard surfaced. There's a couple alternative ways they can do that. I think they've said something about proposing some pavers instead of an asphalt or concrete driveway. And then the planning department will be assigning a new address. And there isn't really a manual for addressing units. They've been done all sorts of ways and can be. We're currently leaning towards assigning an A or a B using the exact same address the house has, except adding an A or a B. We think that's the best method to do that because it's on the same tax lot. I think that'll make the best sense to a fire responder or somebody like that. So that's staff presentation. Is there any questions?
I do have one about the numbering. Maybe more of a comment. I think I like the way that you're leaning on that, especially since it is on the same tax lot. It would make sense. Is that something that we could put into the conditions, or is that something that you'll take care of?
I think we'll just take care of that. I wanted you to be aware that there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason or manual.
Right.
There's city code on numbering buildings, but it doesn't get into that kind of detail to tell us exactly what we're supposed to do. I've seen 1/2 addresses and other things as well, but in commercial situations, we have suites and those kind of things, but I personally kind of like the A and B type situation. So,
Any more questions for staff? All righty. The applicant is, you want to come forward and speak? Your name, your address, and then eventually sign that little piece of paper there.
Okay, I'm Mary Lane, and I'm at 1350 North Birch. And just a little bit about what we want to do. So my family's lived there for probably 40 years, I think. And we recently purchased the home from my mom, and we want to make sure that she can stay close, so we want to build the accessory dwelling unit for her in the back. It's about, I think, 783 square feet. It's a single story, just like our house, and we are reciting it right now, so we'll be able to paint them the same color to make it look the same. I don't know if that's about it, but the purpose of it is for my mother to be close, so.
Do we have any questions? No. I actually do.
Okay,
So,
sure.
you've lived there for 40 years. I assume your mother has lived there as well.
My mother, yes, I haven't lived there for 40 years. My
Okay.
family has.
Okay, your family
So my
has.
mother and father, yes, and I grew up there.
So, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering about once mom, passes, which we all do at some
Sure,
point.
sure.
And you use that as a rental, I would assume, or some, there's somebody back, you can have them, do you want to come up here and join your?
Oh.
meeting?
Well, I was gonna say, we may end up in it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And your kids will live in there.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm going to assume that
Cycle will be
you're,
complete.
Yeah.
so I guess that could you give your name and address as well?
Rob Lane, 1350 Birch Street.
Okay. My concern would just be that you're, if it, whatever occasion arises, that you've thought about what's going to go back there. I mean, that doesn't, not our purview to, to do that, but I'm just thinking it through, so.
Yeah, that's not our plan.
Okay.
And I
don't
think, that's always going to be our property. If, we would have the respect for it to, where it just wouldn't be something that we're going to push somebody in and try and make some money off of rental. We'll always be there, so, yeah.
Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. Be sure to sign in. Opponents, do we have any opponents to this project? Okay,
I'm really not an opponent, I just want to speak my piece.
and you can speak your piece as soon as they finish signing in there, okay?
Okay, there you go. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Name and address, and
Yeah, my name is Sam Jones. I live at 1360 North Birch, and I'm the guy that owns the flag lot that abuts them on the north and east sides. And my home, the house itself, sits 10 feet in this area here.
okay,
It's a two-story house, so consequently, I'm always looking down into their backyard. And to alleviate that, I have put up a lattice work on my patio. I want to say I applaud what you're trying to do for your mother. Okay. So my major concern is loss of privacy, and that could be alleviated or mitigated, maybe by planting some tall, slender trees, where the corner of the house is. Okay. And I was concerned about the house becoming a rental after Sandra becomes incapacitated or whatever. So I don't know what we're going to do about that. So it's not going to be moved. And anyhow, that's my two major concerns was it being turned into a rental and loss of privacy. I don't have that plan. I have not been able to, I don't have it, so I haven't been able to study it.
sure. Any questions?
And I think that's something that I can work with them,
Sure.
but I wanted to bring it up.
I had a question. Now, you have a lattice work, is that right on the property line?
No, it sits on the east end of my house where my patio is. My patio is one story up. So when I built it, I put a lattice work there on the end so that I wasn't looking into their backyard any more than I had to, and vice versa. But now that there's going to be a house in between us, then things change a little bit.
Okay.
So I would like to have some trees, and I was thinking about flowering pear trees because they grow tall, fast, and they're not real wide, so you're not losing a lot of land.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Real quick. You said your property is a flag lot?
Yes, it's the flag lot,
Where does it flag off of, though? What lot did it come off of?
Birch Street, if he has the map there.
Right here.
So it comes,
And my
house
sits right here.
okay, so your driveway then is off of Birch
Yes,
next
this
to
is
the...
my driveway, here.
Okay,
That's my own property, it's not the city's or anybody else's.
okay.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. Do we have any, well, I guess that's neutral. Do we have any rebuttal by the proponents? Any, oh, yes,
Hello,
sir.
if I may, I'm
Yeah.
actually,
As soon as he signs in, we'd like you to come up here and sign in and... Thank you very much. Come on forward. Name and address and your interest in the matter.
sure. My name is Lee Sanderson, and my address is 14870 Southwest Osprey Court in Beaverton, Oregon. And my relations to this project is that actually Mary Sanderson is my sister, and Rob Lane is my brother-in-law. And I'm the one who sort of had to take responsibility for this. I'm the one who kind of created this project. Like Mary was saying, if my memory doesn't fail me, my parents bought that house. It was their first house that they purchased together back in 1976, I believe. And they lived there all these years, and Sam was already there, Mr. Sam Jones. But in 2007, when my dad passed away, I noticed that my mom was having a harder time taking care of the place, and she was getting kind of isolated. It's a big property for a senior widow to take care of. So, and we all tried to do what we could, but it was kind of hard, with everybody's requirements. But basically, as the city planner was saying, those are large lots, they're double-sized lots, and the properties adjacent to it on the south is actually, they are divided. There are two residences that run adjacent to it, so you can see how it was designed, where it was supposed to be a standard 8,000 square foot lot or so in that area when they developed it. So it made a lot of sense. And so basically, like I said, I was overseas at the time, working overseas, and when Dad passed away, I came back, and then I kind of got more involved in trying to figure out how we're going to take care of Mom, because she is, going to be more dependent as she gets older. So, but at that time, my sister and brother-in-law had already had a house, recently purchased house over in Kaiser. And so I came back in country and worked, and so I was trying to, what I did was I moved her to my townhouse in Beaverton, thinking it was simpler and so on. And then I was going to rehab our old family home to maybe sell. But then, we got kind of sentimental about it, and Mom wasn't adjusting being away from Canby after literally 45 years. So then finally, I discussed it with my sister and brother-in-law at dinner one day and said, what about you guys? Come and purchase the house. And then we did that, and we just took care of that. Again, not sure we were going to let Mom stay in Beaverton a little longer and see how she was doing. But in the long run, we realized that sooner than later she's going to need more help, and she needs family around. And so this is why we discussed what are the options. And so I studied up on the ADU, did a little research, and looked at the Portland metro area's standards, as well as the Clackamas County standards. And I thought, wow, this makes sense. And as far as motives, we wouldn't be going through all this. This has already been a long process, trying to get Mom resettled into the right retirement place. And so basically, there are no ulterior motives. I'm sure Mary and Rob, they can't tell you what's going to happen after she passes away. I mean, who can? You know, we don't really know. We don't like to discuss that really, you know, as a family about what it, you know. But as an eventuality, and Mary and Rob, what they were trying to say is correct. They said, you know, they're going to be, by the time Mom goes, they're going to be well into their senior years, most likely. And so it's an open question, open-ended question, so we don't know, you know, but the intent is not to make it an income-producing situation, basically. And what Mr. Jones is talking about, our neighbor, again, they've known each other for 45 years, and he knows my mom very well, and he knew my dad very well. And I understand his concerns about privacy, but his house is actually, it's the side of his house without any windows, and what he's talking about, the lattice work, is just off of his second-story deck. So since this ADU is going to be 783 square feet in one level, small footprint even for the size of that lot, I don't think there will be really any privacy issues. And just to clarify, you know, we always have an open door with Sam. And if we want, you know, we've taken trees down together. That was an inconvenience. That was on our lot. That was an inconvenience for him. We took down 2 trees, being good neighbors. And in this case, if he wanted to keep his privacy off his deck intact, that's fine. We can, you know, whatever makes sense as far as maybe putting some new plantings, because it's only a small linear feet. Can't be more than about 15 to 20 feet in length that we're talking about. So it's not really much of an impedance on privacy at all. And the rest of the neighbors, there's so much plantings there and they won't even notice. So that's all I wanted to clarify, was the motives and intentions. And of course, working with our neighbor of 45 plus years now, of course, we will take it into consideration about possible plantings and things like that. Okay?
I agree with everything he said. It's only about a 20-foot length there, and that's, you know.
Sounds to me like you guys are going to work it out.
Yeah, it's easy.
Well, absolutely, and we're looking forward to it. That's one of the reasons why we want to move Mom back. It's what she knows for literally almost 50 years. It's not 40. We're going on 50 years pretty soon.
And I guarantee you, she will be over in my garden pulling weeds.
That's a great project.
But I do understand Mr. Jones' concerns that he wants to have a say in it, and absolutely, it's always an open door.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Just make sure you sign in there. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Any more comment from proponents? Okay. Hearing no further public testimony, then we are going to close the public hearing. Let's see, discussion by the Planning Commission. Do you have any comments, anything that you'd like to discuss on this? Mr. Hensley?
I think that they've got a pretty
Mr. Boswell? Okay, then we will move on to the decision, and I will entertain a motion on this project.
What was the number?
That would be,
CUP, that's what it was.
yes.
I would move that we approve as written, CUP 14-02.
Have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve conditional use permit 14-02. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, we will move on to,
Thank you, Sam.
there is no new business.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I'd like to
Mr. Ryder.
take a moment to introduce our new city manager, Mr. Richard Robinson.
Okay,
Just started today.
first day on the job. Wow, congratulations.
We're watching you guys.
I would expect no less. We're a dangerous crew up here. Okay, so we'll move on to final decisions. We'll start with the carryover from last meeting, the Verizon Wireless proposal. Anybody? Brian? Help me out here.
Yeah, so the conditions that are listed in the final order are numbered differently because Chair Smith, in your motion, asked that we get rid of condition 1 and 2, which he found superfluous, and so they're no longer here. And so that renumbered everything.
Yeah.
And then, I'm trying to remember a couple of the other items that I changed too. It's been a while now. There was another change, but it's gone now. I'm not sure what it was. See if it comes to me.
They were talking about the sprinkler system, is that going to?
Yeah, the irrigation system was one. It was the landscaping.
The water, the landscaping, and the paint, and
So-
the color.
Bagels.
Yeah, and, oh, by the way, we've also, they've been working on this thing, waiting for the final order to be approved and move forward, but they've decided at this point, in case you have a problem with it, on slats that are gray in color. The idea that there are other choices they thought about, we discussed, were green and brown. Any of those are more than willing to make whatever color we want it to be. But the thought was that the gray kind of works with the existing buildings and the tower itself, probably better than any other. I think Laney was kind of partial to green. I don't know if you kind of mentioned that to me.
Kind of partial not to having it.
Exactly.
No need to put that in the record.
The irrigation, what they've decided to do on that, since they've continued to visit with me, is use, I don't know if you've seen some of them actually on the Northwoods development along Territorial, where they planted some new trees, and they're bags that, I don't know whether they hold, how many gallons they hold, but that's one of their solutions to having it adequately watered. They're still going to have to bring water on site or draw it from the adjacent building that's on that property, but they're going to make those arrangements, and they've, in their construction drawings, they've made all sorts of notes about guaranteeing that they're meeting the city code requirements. They're going to keep the plants alive. They'll replace them if they die, and that they're going to use these bags for watering the shrubs and the trees.
Okay.
That is pushing somewhat what the code says is allowed, because it basically says it needs to be irrigation system. But they also talked at your meeting about the fact they're using drought tolerant, and they've got the species picked now, and they're all drought tolerant type species, so that in a year or two at the most, they will be established, and there will be no need for an irrigation system at that point. So they're guaranteeing to keep them alive the first 2 years in whatever method they need to do. We've had one other occasion, I can't remember if, I don't think, Yeah, Dragonfly, so you remembered them. They actually had some difficulty in the fact that they didn't put in irrigation. They put in a temporary irrigation system, but they didn't leave it up long enough. And so things were fine when I went out and checked off for their occupancy, but then they died a couple months later. And so then they had to replace things. And so they've had a little bit of difficulty, so it didn't go without issue. But this site is considerably different than a major industrial development in our premier industrial park. This is a 50 by 50 lease area hidden behind slatted screens. In fact, they kept wondering, well, why are we planting the plants behind the slats in the fence? You won't even be able to see the plants. And I said, well, it's extra screening protection. And so they're more than willing to do that landscape buffering. There isn't room outside the existing fencing to do it on the outside, so they're putting it inside, where you probably won't see it, but they're guaranteeing they're going to keep it alive. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, and the conditions reflect that in here, that they have the requirement to keep the trees alive and water them. Not that it absolutely has to be an irrigation system unless you think it needs to be.
Any further discussion before I move on to a vote? And I will entertain a motion for final approval of DR 14-02 /CUP 14-01 Verizon Wireless.
Do we need a motion, or do we just need to vote?
I think we just need to vote. Is that right? Motion. Motion, then vote.
Okay. Well, I would move that we approve DR 1402 /CUP 1401 Verizon Cell Tower as proposed.
I hear a second.